G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire podcast. My name's Mark and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting. And good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
There you go. And for those listening, we have with us tonight Haroon and Ali, special guests that we're going to, g'day guys, and we're going to ask them a few questions about different things over the evening, but they've joined us along to talk about their hunting and all sorts of other experiences. So I'm actually going to kick off by talking about my wall, which is kind of, me taking over, but that's okay. If that's all right with you guys.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Okay. So if you, our latest podcast with Robert Borzak, if you listen to it on the podcast, that's great. But if you can, have a look at it on YouTube as well, because he gives us a sweep of his trophy room, and it's
pretty impressive.
It's ridiculous, okay? It's ridiculous. It's like there's trophies sitting on top of trophies, and there's stuff from all over the world. So I decided, I felt a bit, I had trophy room envy after that. So I decided
you should
to grab some of mine. So I'm going to move my screen up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, but give me a chance. Give me a chance, brother. So I'm going to swing it around like that. And so there's my trophy wall. It's not a trophy room, it's my trophy wall. Now, I've already got some feedback on that, and one of the bits of feedback was, where do they come from? And everything on that wall except for that red there is public land, okay? So they're all public land trophies. Now, I'm going to tilt it again. See that billy up there? That's a public land 36-inch billy. So there's a trophy billy from public land. The pigs are I got from different places, and the two fallow are Hanging Rock and Nundle, technically, and the other billy, the small billy, is a Severn billy that I got with my boy, and the red is a Brisbane Valley red, because I haven't yet to find red on public land, but something we work for. And the fallow that's just a skull cap, that's the one where I've posted photos about hunting on the cheap. That's that fallow there. So that's me showing off. Okay, guys.
I was going to say your wall was looking fuller and fuller from you compared to your older podcasts. It's looking different.
Yeah. Yeah, well, all that stuff is now on that wall there. So basically all I did was kind of move stuff around. So most of that was on that wall is now in front of me. There is actually I haven't been able to get it up there. I've got a 4-foot long carpenter shark, the rostrum with all the teeth on it. Got one of them. It's on the wall there, and it's got that some years ago, but couldn't figure a space for that. That's I'm pretty happy with that one, because ultimately those things will probably become extinct, and that's basically living dinosaur. So
interesting.
So that's my trophy wall.
Interesting that you said you haven't taken any red deer on public land. You have been going to Hanging Rocks for quite a bit, right? And Ian got me in touch with a guy that I went hunting with, and he took a red deer there, and I did bump into a couple of red deer in the past, but not just a hind. But there are red deer at Hanging Rocks, definitely. Not many of them, not many, but there are there.
For a number of years, the ADA used to use a photo of Adrian Fishley with a very nice red. That was a Nundle red. He got that right up the northern end of Nundle. And when I was down there, well, when we were down there together, I found red tracks, big red tracks. So yeah, they're there. I just haven't been able to lay eyes on one as yet.
Well, there was rumours of Wapiti cross reds, wasn't there?
Yes, there is. Those rumours were around Hanging Rock. I'm not sure how real those rumours were.
And I don't know whether this is a rumor or not.
Those rumours were out of the deep dark gullies of Tugelo, Mark.
No, well, I actually heard them. I've heard different rumours that they were in Hanging Rock.
About
so
probably three or 4 years ago, there was a photo socialised of one that got taken out of Tugelo, off close to one of the farms over the back of that. And I think it was Adrian that was talking to us at the time, was saying he's fairly sure he was chasing that exact animal for a number of years. So they came off a farm over the back of there, is what we understand, and whether the blood's thinned out with the reds that are there or not. But every now and then there's a throwback and something that people like to get excited about. But nice to think that they're there if you want to go and explore the deep, dark, gnarly places of Tugelo, and they can get pretty bloody terrible down there. So it's worth a look. Gets the blood going.
Yeah.
So what's Wapiti? Is it elk? Is it deer? Or is it hybrid? What is it?
It's elk.
Elk. Yeah.
So we do have elk in Australia.
Wapiti is, from my understanding, I'm happy to be corrected otherwise. Wapiti is a native, as in a Native American name for elk.
Yeah.
That's why they call them Wapiti. It's a different name for the same animal.
Oh, I didn't know that we have elk in Australia. I knew they were in New Zealand.
Well, that said, there's always been lots of talk about they're here.
Lots of rumours, yeah.
Lots of rumours. So the talk that I had for a number of years, there was a couple running up around in Hanging Rock. So there's, and there's also been talk that there's a herd of them in one of the snowy national forests, national parks up that way. But again,
Snowy Mountain elk.
There's all sorts of. I mean, and look, it's not completely unrealistic. There's all sorts of weird animals in this country.
But question.
I mean, interestingly, my last project was with.
Say again, guys.
Go, Haroon.
Go ahead, Ali.
I was just saying, my last project was with the Department of Forestry, Agriculture and Fishery.
Mm-hmm.
I was a part of biosecurity unit, so I had a lot of reading when I was with them. I did read about Wapiti reports, but I never came across anything which says that there was been effort to breed Wapiti in Australia, and or any private property breeding them and farming them, which might have got into a state forest. I read about Samba, fallow, and other deer species, including blackbuck, but I never heard about an official report of they getting farmed or breed here.
Well, I know where there's blackbuck. I've got photos of them and that's a weird thing. You come around the corner in the morning and you say, "Hey, what's that in there? Oh, hang on, what's that spiral antler thing?" Sure enough, the spiral horn thing. So yeah, and I don't know a great deal, but I believe that they introduced them to better because the potential for hybridization with reds. So it was a way of making reds bigger from a farming point of view, rather than breed them as an individual breed themselves. That's what I heard anyway. So they would introduce them because of the potential of crossover, hybridization, so you could make a bigger red from a farming point of view.
So the Deer Industry Association of Australia lists the major species of deer farmed commercially in Australia being red deer, fallow deer, wapiti or elk, and rusa. So it's listed as something that has been commercially farmed. Chital and Samba are also farmed, but only in small numbers. So There you go.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I assume
There we go.
that they don't come under as feral, right? You can't shoot them if you see them, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you can absolutely.
Well, that'd be
Wapiti.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All it says on your permit. It says all deer
Are they
species.
listed?
Yeah, I do see that on the permit.
says
Yeah,
all-
it is there on the harvest report. You do get an option to take them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you see a wapiti in a state forest, you can shoot it. Yep.
Yeah.
Good to know.
There we go.
I'll let you guys know when I'm there in Tagalog next time, Ian.
Yeah, that's right.
You're gonna be
Send me
a photo of
send me
Haroon
the-
with a big wapiti.
I'll
I
be
tell
there.
you something. If I'm there, Haroon, and you lining up on a wapiti, I'm going to drive past tooting the horn when that's happening.
I'm not going to tell
Pay
you
you
how
back
far
for
it
a
is.
couple of
Because you know
for a couple of yeah. That
Not
story
be-
will have to come out tonight. That's for sure.
Right. Okay.
So we probably should introduce our guests. We've got Ali with us tonight, and Haroon, as we said. Haroon's from. We've been talking with Haroon on a number of occasions. In fact, one of our most popular podcasts, which is about how to hunt the Nundle system. You were the star of it, and you took that learning and went away and were successful. And so the reason why we've asked the guys on tonight is really to discuss a few different things. We've had, as a group, I suppose, Jono, Ian, and I had questions over things like, how to make camp more inclusive of all hunters, and especially with the getting a better understanding of halal and hunting, because we can. I suppose for most of us, halal is something where we think about from a supermarket, livestock, domestic approach. But how does that? Yeah, well, one, does it exist in a hunting sense, and if it does, how does that play out? What do you reckon, guys? Should we move into that, or we want to talk about a few things first?
No, I think it's
Ian, Jono, come on.
It's a great conversation to start.
Sure. Okay. So, should I reframe that question?
No, good. I'll
Okay,
give
go for it, buddy.
brief introduction. So me and Haroon, we grew up together. We are cousins. I'm a IT architect by profession, and hunting is my hobby. And by the way, the first podcast Haroon did with yourself, around the Nundle system, I was with him, and so we both got the first year in Australia together. So hunting is a passion and a hobby. So I did got to your point about understanding the diverse cultures and background, and be inclusive so that you can accommodate diverse cultures, and and have that understanding of the culture and the sensitivity. From an Islamic perspective, Islam, or the religion Islam, is a way of life. It's a very comprehensive religion, talks about every minor details about how you lead your life. Even it has prescribed the way you go and relieve yourself in a toilet and how you clean yourself after that, to that detail. It has addressed the political affair, the international affairs, how you run a state. So it's kind of like address every single element of politics or personal life, how to raise a family, even hunting. So the Prophet Muhammad and his companions, peace be upon him, were very passionate about the hunting, and hunting was one of the source of acquiring the sustenance, right? And hunting is one of the most halal. When I say halal, it is permissible, and the opposite of halal is haram. So hunting is one of the most purest form of meat, or most purest form of sustenance you can acquire. So when I say Islam is a holistic religion, if I am earning my sustenance, if I'm making money, I need to be honest. I need to uphold the highest moral character. I should not be cheating. But the way we do our job, there's an element of, cheating and lying, and the money you earn from it could be somewhat between halal and haram because you were not very pure or you were not very, faithful to your job or things like of that nature. So halal is not just about, how you just, slaughter the animal. It's also about how you earn it. So hunting is one of the ways you're relying completely on your skills and you're relying on God to get the animal. So hunting is one of the most purest form of halal compared to me earning money, which has an element of dishonesty or betrayal or etc., and then buying. So hunting was one of the most preferred, or it was, very much practiced by the early generation of Muslims because it's coming directly from the free animal, and there's no element of haram in it as far as you do by following the procedure. So there has been a comprehensive procedure has been defined in Islamic jurisprudence. There's a lot of misconception as well in the community around hunting. So one way of acquiring the meat is that you raise your own cattle, right? And if you're raising your own cattle, there's a process of how you slaughter the cattle, right? So you need to make sure, the cattle is healthy and you're not slaughtering in front of other animals because it could be distressful to the other animals. You take it in an isolation position, you follow the rituals, make sure it's facing the Mecca, which is the central direction of Muslim where they face and pray. And I can talk more about it if you guys are interested. And you say the name of God, say Bismillah, which is literally translated into in the name of Allah, and you slit the throat. So what that happened, it causes the blood to release, and the pressure from the brain, the blood pressure from the brain releases, and we believe that's one of the most human way and most least painful way or less painful way of slaughtering the animal. And so the blood drains off, even though it might feel as if animal is in agony, which all it's trying to do, the muscles are contracting and it is trying to throw out the blood, and you take the meat. But in case of, so that's how, if you want to acquire the meat from a farm raised animal. But in the case of hunting, hunting could be very spontaneous. It could be just a reaction, right? So back in those days, people used to hunt with a bow and arrow, right? So the procedure is you just say Bismillah before you release your arrow. Obviously, you have to make sure that, it's a lethal shot. It's not harming the animal. There's been procedure. You can't take a stone and hit the animal. That's not allowed. You need to make sure your arrow is sharp enough and you're taking the most perfect kill shot and try to take the animal ethically and manage the distance and be cautious that, it's at least painful or less, painful to the animal, and say Bismillah and release the arrow. And obviously the animal's going to run. You're allowed to chase it. And once you reach the animal, if you find it's still alive, yes, you can slaughter it by saying Bismillah. But if the animal is dead, you can still have it. And that's something many Muslims as well doesn't know because of lack of knowledge. So it is enough for you to say Bismillah. And even if the animal has been dead before you acquire it, it is still halal to consume. It's not necessarily that it has to be a Muslim. The Quran refers the meat from the people of the book, which is referring to the Jews and Christians. Because what we believe, Islam is a continuation to an Abrahamic faith, which all the Christians and the Jews believe in. And if you look at the procedure, if I go back to the Zabiha, the process of slaughtering is very much similar to crochet process which Jews practice. So it's similar, yeah, very, very much similar. And they also say the name of the god and they slaughter and they make sure that the knife is sharp. So we does as well. So that's the procedure. So before you release your arrow, you need to say Bismillah. That's one of the condition. And even if a Jew or a Christian shoots the animal, but the condition is say Bismillah or say in the name of the God and take the animal, then that animal is allowed to be consumed. But if you reach the animal and you find it's still alive, then you try to slit the throat so that it can be, not finding the reasoning, but the procedure is to be on the safe side and make it legal for you to have the consumption. There are justification where other Muslim scholars says that, well, if you find the animal, just slit the throat because it will release the blood pressure from the brain and it will lose the sensitivity, etc., etc., etc. But it's also kind of like, you're making sure that it is allowed. You're making sure, okay, you found it alive and you're, following that Zabia process or slitting the throat so that it is halal. But it's not mandatory. As far as you pull the trigger or release the arrow by saying Bismillah, it's more than enough to make it permissible to be eaten. Obviously, not all the animals are allowed. There are certain animals, for example, you can't hunt a snake because they got fangs, right?
Huh.
Any animal with fangs are not allowed to be consumed. Pork, pig is not allowed, again. For
Fangs.
consumption, there's no halal process to it.
And
yeah,
fangs,
that's an interesting one. Fangs. Because like muntjac and Chinese water deer have fangs. They're deer that have fangs.
Are they
Oh,
fangs
yeah.
or are they teeth?
Are those fangs or are they teeth?
Well, I mean,
I think they look like canine.
What's the difference? Okay, what's the difference?
One
Look,
has
to me,
one has
No, not necessarily. So yeah, I mean,
I think the general
that's a Chinese
interpretation
water
of
dog. See,
fangs is
that's a Chinese water deer.
yeah.
And they have, and they're universally regarded as fangs.
But then I think there are.
And I've got a muntjac skull, which is that, but muntjac also have antlers, so they're even weirder.
One of them somewhere as well.
Ali,
So
doesn't the
they're
condition
a
come over
deer that
there?
have antler and fangs. Yeah.
Now the what
Herbivores.
it means by fangs, and I have to
Yeah,
reconfirm.
that's an interesting one.
It is the interpretation, not just the interpretation. I think it's God, Allah knows the best. It's referring to reptiles.
Yeah.
Generally any herbivorous animal is allowed for consumption, right? So Chinese red deer falls into that category. But animals with canine, for example, who are carnivorous are not allowed. Tigers, lions, or hyenas, wild dogs are not allowed for consumption. Even in birds, birds with talon, or I'm not sure if I'm
Birds of
pronouncing
prey
it correctly.
type thing. Birds of prey type. Yeah.
Thing like eagles and vultures.
Yeah. Bird of prey. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not allowed for consumption. Any seafood is allowed, and there's no procedure.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I can just grab a fish, hit it, eat it.
Fish, that's right. Fish is a fish.
Fish is a fish.
That's you don't want to be a fish. No. Yeah, fish is, no matter where you are in the world, the fish is a fish. That's it.
But there are certain school of thoughts which does not allow prawns or basically the animals which are bedded on the floor. But majority of the scholars, some of the school of thoughts doesn't allow prawns, for example. But majority of the scholars, I'm not talking about lay people, I'm talking about the scholars.
Yeah.
One of the great scholars, Imam Shafi'i, classical scholar who was in the early generation, he said any seafood is allowed as far as it's not rotten. Even if you find a fish lying, as far as it's not rotten, and you feel with your assessment that it's not poisonous, or then it's allowed. But again, if you know a fish is poisonous, or a mushroom which could be poisonous, or any consumption which could be detrimental to your health, that's not allowed.
So
That's
in a nutshell,
that's really that's it. It's the I suppose the historic sensibility of it is very clear, isn't it? If you're going to hunt an animal and you're hunting it with with a tool that probably won't cause instantaneous death, i.e., anything from about the turn of the last century before. We're not talking about 90-pound compound bows that with broadheads. We're talking about basically a classical bow or a spear. the very chance is the animal's not going to die straight away anyway. So it's wholly reasonable that you needed to be able to dispatch it. It's quite interesting.
But like what Ali just mentioned, like the whole thing that he explained, if you think about it, the hunting, the ethical hunting, the aspects of ethical hunting, he's just spoken about that, but in the light of Islam. That's it. The only thing different is that we have to say Bismillah, which literally translates into in the name of Allah or God. That's the most important part of it. The rest of it is, I think, it's just the same procedure that every hunter lives by, or the etiquettes or that every hunter lives by today, tries to live by. So I don't see any difference in that. And slitting the throat, I think that's the most humane way, right? So if rather than shooting another bullet, going close to it, rather than that, you can just slit the throat. It's quicker death, I guess.
Well, I think that even, as you mentioned, even the requirement to have a sharp knife is like, there's a very practical lesson in that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Plus, how does people used to, if they want to, harvest the meat from the farm-raised animal? I'm not talking about modern age. Let's say if you go back to 1200th century. I mean, I think this was the procedure, right? Slitting the throat was the procedure.
Oh yeah, I mean, and you don't have to go back. You go back last week. There's probably people who still country kill on farms who don't shoot the animal. They they straddle the sheep. They straddle the sheep. Put their one hand underneath its chin, lift its face up in the air, and slit its throat. I mean, that's.
I'm putting my hand up because my network is delayed, and I try and talk. I don't want to talk over anyone. I was just going to say, even my father, like he was a shepherd on a sheep station in New Zealand, and even when we were growing up, that was the preferred method, was to slit their throats, because he felt like it preserved the meat in a better way. It was a very quick death. Yes, like you said, they can thrash around a little bit, but that's just nerves and bits and pieces going on. They're well dead at that point. And he felt that bleeding them out quickly was the least stressful way. So I thought that was. I think people probably still do that now on the farms. So I don't think that's. I mean, probably to some more city people, that's a little bit more visceral. It's a tougher thing to do. I think it's easier for people to stand behind a rifle than it is to look in the eye of an animal when they do that sort of stuff. So it can be confronting, absolutely. But I don't think that there's anything unique about that. A couple of questions while I'm talking. So I've had a couple of these conversations in camps, trying to understand it for myself, just to make sure that I was, supporting some of the people that I was mentoring, right? Because we hunt a number of people, and they come from all different walks of life. So I asked the question, and I'll get you to answer it, even though I sort of think I understand it. So you're talking about speaking the name of your God, regardless of what religion you're talking about, prior to killing that animal. Now, hunting, as you all know, can be very quick. And I can tell you, if I had to stop and do that, I'd probably let half the deer walk away. Even though it's a quick thing in your mind, it's probably quite instinctive to do it. But there's got to be situations where that doesn't happen. And talk me through that. There must be you're still doing the right thing in your mind. You're still doing the right thing by everyone concerned. I'm assuming there's a post-mortem version of that doesn't mean that the animal spoils on the ground. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, not just my thoughts, by the way. I learn, by the way, I did learn the religion, and I try to follow those scholars who try to stick to the revelation, the Quran, and how the Prophet himself implemented the Quran in his life and his close companions. So there's less room of opinions because we have evidence to goes back to the original sources, right? Otherwise, people are different and they can interpret differently. But whatever
Sure.
law we practice, we need to trace back to the source. So that's my methodology. Now, it's a very good question because hunting, you have to be very spontaneous because you're seeing the animal, and especially deer hunt. You literally got 2 to 5 seconds, right? Especially when you're bush hunting, all you need to just lift the scope and tap, right? So one of the workaround is to be perfect, to make it halal, and Haroon taught me that trick as well, and it works for me. And even in daily, you might have seen in Haroon's videos that he opens the doors and say Bismillah. So whenever you start something new or sit in your car or you want to start any new work, right? For example, just before starting this podcast, I say Bismillah and I sat here. So that becomes your habit. It becomes instantaneous. So when when you go to the target practicing you might take your 2 and 500 rounds. For each time you lift your scope, while you're lifting your scope, you train yourself to say Bismillah, even before you take the animal in the scope. So it becomes natural. But there have been cases where people does not remember, and there has been some narrations directly around this topic. So when you're loading a magazine, for example, you're loading a magazine with bullets, you say Bismillah at that time, and you put all your magazines. Oh, sorry, it's late over here. It's almost 10 p.m., so I'm mixing the words. So when you're putting your bullets in the magazine, you say Bismillah and put it. So you're kind of like covered, and you put the magazine and you walk around. Yes, it may not be loaded, but what I normally do, I've got this safari sling. I even load the bullet, but the bolt is not active, right? It's just there with the rubber band on it. So I say Bismillah, and the bullet is sitting in the chamber. And the moment I see the deer, I just lift it up. But once I forgot, but I do make sure that when I'm putting the bullet or when I'm loading the bullet and keeping it ready, I say Bismillah at that time, and I'm ready. Because the main fundamental in Islam is your intention, right?
Yeah.
Your intention, that you made an intention that you're going to take the animal in the name of God, and you keep it. So even though you're not able to commit an action, but before you commit an action, you had intention, so that should suffice, and it's still halal. It happened to me as well recently. Even though I practice a lot, out of nowhere I saw an animal and I just took it. And after I took it, I realized that while I was pulling the trigger, I didn't say Bismillah, but when I came out of my car, I made sure that I had my magazine loaded, and when I did my first, bullet in the chamber, I did say Bismillah, so it's allowed, inshallah. When I say inshallah, it means God willing.
So, in a sense, what you're saying is
intention.
I'm using we're probably going to use the wrong words here, but you're blessing the activity of your hunt, not necessarily the individual animal at the time, and that's showing the intent that you're hoping for. And yes, you're going to do everything you can to follow your guidelines and things, but things happen. Action can be fast, and I sort of understand that. So my second question then, so I'm mentoring a fella, and if I'm not a religious man, right? So I'm not of the book of any persuasion, so it doesn't matter what happens in my world. I'm doing the wrong thing under these guidelines, right? So, is your Islamic hunting buddy able to bless an animal that I shoot? Is there a scenario where that works? You and I, Ali, are hunting together, but I take a shot, but I want to gift you the animal. Is this a possibility? Is there a way that I can do that, or I just take the backseat in that scenario? And I'm not trying to pull apart the rules or find loopholes. That's not what I'm asking. It's really about trying to support a hunt.
Look, Islamic jurisprudence, there's a general ruling and there's a lot of exceptions. Like sure. I said, if you open up the Quran, the way the Quran articulates, it's very rich in its meaning, and it tried to address multiple scenarios. Even the hunting has a lot of different scenarios. It's like that debate between what's the best caliber, 308, 30-06, 300, what grain bullet, and it goes on and on and on. So pretty much is like that. Yes, just a caliber, but there's so many branches, and branches has got branches. The similar analogy I could give about the rulings or the constitution of Islam. So it's now, you said you're not a religious man, right? But generally, would you consider yourself as a Christian, or nothing?
No.
Like-
No. I was raised as a Christian, but I'm not a believer of it. So no, I'm not.
Yeah, no, look, that's a good one, and I thought you guys might ask another question to me relating to this topic.
Just say, just to clarify, it's 3006, by the way.
There you go.
I just think we just need to clarify that, okay? If there is one truth in this universe, it's 3006. Okay?
I think that's what Haroon was trying to point out. The religious sensitivity is equivalent to caliber sensitivity. So I apologize for that.
Ali, the answer can be no. It's okay. I don't need to find an answer to it.
I want to.
Well, I suppose to clarify, I do not regard myself as a Christian, so I'm a pure secular. That's it. I'm a secularist.
Before I answer your question, Ian, I'd like to talk about another aspect which could be quite interesting. Technically, any meat from Jews and Christians is allowed, right? And because of that, there's so much. Now, the second point is, but the Christians of today's era, when you talk to them, my mother was Christian, or my grandfather was Christian, or my parents used to go to church, but I'm not a Christian. So there's so much confusion. And one of the members did respond to you, Mark, saying that if it is from Jews and Christians, the meat is allowed, right? But the technicality is the Jews and Christians of the modern Jews and Christians, the majority, I'm not saying, there are still some practicing Jews and Christians, many. But in general, I'm talking about, they say they don't consider themselves to be Christians. So it becomes very tricky, this law. So in that sense, it's not allowed because they're not Jews or Christians, right? And in saying that, they were Jews and Christians at the time of Prophet, right? So they used to come and offer meat. But the procedure of processing the meat among the Jews and Christians were well known because they were very similar to Islamic practice, because Christians used to follow the law from the Old Testament, right? So it was very similar to kosher. So it was allowed because it was understood that Jews and Christians follow the same process because it's the same God. The God of Abraham, God of Moses is the God of Muslims. But in the modern days, right, or I'm talking about, Western Christians in America and Australia in general, they don't regard themselves as Christians. So if a non-Christian, non-Jew or non-Muslim, even though he may say Bismillah and shoot it, that meat is not allowed for a Muslim.
Yep.
It's the intent.
Right. Unless somebody
says intent.
So it has to be among these three religions. If for example, it's a Hindu, right? I've got a lot of Hindu friends, and even if he shoots in the name of Allah, that meat is not allowed. He has to be the Muslim, Jew, or a Christian, or a believing, maybe not a full practicing, but he say, okay, you just need to say, I'm a Christian, and I believe in the God of Moses or Abraham, then that's the minimum requirement.
That's the.
That's
assuming
with
your question.
For most of us, that's clear,
In the question you were asking, I'm assuming that you were saying, so I'm assuming, I think I'm lagging. Probably that's why. So I'm assuming with your question is that you were the person who you are mentoring. Is that person with you at the time you're shooting, or you were just saying that you're shooting it and he's not there with you and you're giving it to him? if he's there with you, because if he's
So
there with you,
my
you
scenario
can
is that
absolutely shoot it.
No, the question is the way I understood your question, Ian, that you shot a animal, and while you're shooting an animal, you don't consider yourself to be a Christian, right? So you don't regard yourself to be Christian. So the animal you shot and the meat you have harvested is not halal for a Muslim.
Yeah.
Did I understood your question correct? By the way,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. And I
you
mean,
did. Yeah, you
there's
did.
a scenario.
And yeah, you did. And I think, Haroon, to answer your question, I was helping. I was mentoring a new hunter who was Muslim. He was with me at the time, but I shot the animal because it was quick. And at that point in time, I would have liked to have shared that animal with the fella that was with me. And under this scenario, as far as I can tell, I can't do that.
All right. So in that
Yeah.
case, then if you're there, if he's there with you and you shoot it, he can absolutely go and slaughter that animal, and then he can use it as well.
You're assuming that
if you both reach that animal,
I shot it dead.
no, I think what Haroon is saying, this is different scenario, right? There are two scenarios here. You shot the animal, it's dead when you reach it, right? So then it's not allowed. But you shot the other scenario, you shot an animal, you reached the animal still alive, and your Muslim friend said Bismillah and slaughtered it or slit the throat. Then it's allowed, inshallah.
Okay.
I don't think Haroon was intentionally having a go at your shooting prowess, man. But
No, and while we're being jovial, and I don't want this to sound really bad, but you're telling me I should just slow them down.
Just shoot the
That's
front
a
legs.
joke.
That's it.
that's right.
Shoot off the shoulder or front
That's
leg,
right.
yeah.
That's right. No, I suppose for me is that when I generally share meat, okay,
Yes, same.
so that's kind of what it is. You know, that's what. So if, and that's always been. So when you come back to camp, if you hit a deer, and we're cleaning up, you shoot a deer, clean up in camp, you say, "Who does anyone want some?" So that's what it is. So I would extend that offer to that offer isn't circumvent. I extend it to everyone. I say, okay, so that's something I just would be so if someone said no, I can't take it, I'd go, oh, okay, that's why. I'd give it context.
And what about from a follow-up shot? So if you shot a deer and you had said your blessing, but you didn't fatally kill that deer, and we were having to search for it, and I was helping you search for it, I found it, and then I shot it and put a finishing shot in it, and I'm not a practicing Christian, what happens then? If you had blessed it when you took the first shot with the intent to kill?
That's very technical.
Sorry.
We need a whiteboard.
I had a similar. I was hearing this podcast today.
Now, there are situations in this. Look, there are situations, for example, dog hunting is prescribed in Islamic law. So when you're releasing the dog, or falcon hunting, or you can hunt with a leopard, right? You release that animal saying Bismillah, and the animal, for example, the dog got it. But when you reach the animal, there are situations you're seeing two dogs, and you're unsure which dog took it. The one you release by Bismillah or saying Bismillah, or the other dog, which you does not own. So there are situations like that. I might have to refer the books, and there are many books. I have to go through this many books.
Gee, man, we didn't want to get your homework. We just wanted to...
Didn't mean for it to be technical, but
yeah. Now that's a good situation. Look, I might have to come back to you on it. Right.
No. I have a very similar situation, Ali. Well, I was hearing this podcast today. Well, apparently this happened in America quite recently, so it's a bit of a side note. But what happened was there was a lady who shot a deer at about 600 meters, and and she shot about 3 shots at that deer, 3 or 4 shots, and there was this other guy. Is apparently quite well known in the hunting industry. He shot that same deer from about 700 meters from another direction, and then they both reached, and then they started fighting who that deer belongs to. So apparently there's a law in America which states there are two opinions to that. So whoever shoots first, that's their deer, and the other law is other states' law is whoever shoots the first lethal shot, it's their deer. So it's a very similar situation.
The second one, which you say, will be very close to Islamic law, and I'm using the analogy of those two dogs I've given. Whoever takes the lethal shot, if the Muslim guy takes the lethal shot, then it's halal for a Muslim consumption. But he might have just have taken a.
You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know until you find that. Right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, lethal shots a bit. Yeah.
But look, there's a lot of room for benefits of doubt as well, and open to interpretation. And but for that one to have a confirmed ruling, I might have to consult the scholars, because that's tricky. And I won't be surprised if there's opinions among the scholars about it. But it's going to be tricky because in general, wastage is highly discouraged, right? And there's also a room for benefit of doubts to make things halal as well. But there are always different opinions. You might see one Muslim might say, one particular individual, because of his mindset, is like, that's doubtful, I don't want to use it. Other individual might say, doubtfuls are allowed, and he might still take it.
Ian, you had your hand up, I saw that.
Yes, I keep raising my hand.
I think he is having internet.
And the context of this always is, in the spirit of helping people, so, religious or not religious, the context here is I'm helping a new hunter. We've taken the opportunity to shoot an animal, and, that new hunter was part of the hunt, and the right thing to do is to share the spoils. So, you're doing it with that sort of mindset. So, yeah, I was hoping, as I thought about this afternoon, knowing that we were going to have this conversation, and I knew a fellow that I'd spoken to said if you were in the situation where you had forgotten the blessing beforehand, then retrospectively you could still offer it. That potentially that was doable over an animal that I had shot. With all of that context in mind. But I think what I'm hearing is to be as safe as possible. Don't carry the rifle, and let the person who's coming with me do the damage. There's no room for doubt.
I mean, but that was a very interesting point you brought up there about wastage. So there's also the question of, obviously, and this is just an interpretation. You don't want to have an argument about can you use it or not use it while it's wasting on the ground, because that's actually maybe even a greater, a greater, sin, for a better of a word, than actually, the wastage of the animal is probably the worst thing you can do, rather than, which is, again, you think about it from a subsistence point of view. If that is that true? If that thing on the ground is your only food source, you hardly want to get into an arm wrestle about, what it is you need to eat. So I think that's that idea of, the value of the animal in itself has some weight into the argument. Is it a right or is it a right or a wrong kill? I think that's quite an interesting take on it, that idea of wastage. Because I mean, I know that from the people I hunt with, there is nothing wrong in someone taking a second shot on an animal that you shot if your first shot hasn't been a good shot, and simply because you'd rather say it's dead rather than it's now somewhere suffering because of so it's no longer about who rules. It's about, okay, you have an obligation to dispatch this animal as quickly as possible, so that that overrides other considerations. The primary consideration is that the welfare of the animals got to be taken care of. So if your friend shoots and fires and doesn't land a fatal shot, and that looks like that deer's just about to disappear into heavy timber, and you might not see it again. If you take the second shot and kill it, well, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, no question. Look, a couple of things there. The animal rights has been upheld and stipulated 1400 years back from now, when like I said, the knife should be sharp. You can't, and halal is not just about that meat; it's all about your actions as well, whether your actions are halal or not. For example, you're not allowed to just kill a kangaroo for target practice. Prophet ﷺ said it specifically, when you're hunting, then don't just hunt it for target practicing. Hunt it when you're using it. Don't let it go waste. For example, it's not allowed for me to go and just shoot around just for recreation if it's not for the meat consumption, unless it's for culling. If the animals are known for destroying farmlands or being harmful to the human beings, culling is allowed, right? But you're not allowed to waste. There's rights in animals, and there are narrations, a classical narration. For example, a woman, even though she was very sinful, she showed a mercy to a dog by giving a water, because in Arabia, in desert, it's a harsh climate, right? And she gave the water to the dog who was struggling, and because of that act, Allah liked it and granted paradise to this woman, even though she was sinful. But in another case, there was a very righteous woman. She cornered a cat, locked it, and let it die starving. And even though she was righteous all her life, because of that one act, she had to go through hell. She'll be punished in the hell for a time period till that sin is been expiated. So there are narrations like that. And it's very serious that we don't, if the hunter's not upholding the right. So yes, not waste, hunt to make sure that you're harvesting from it, not just hunt for target practicing, or unless it's for culling. And also talk about halal is not just about the meat, but if you're training somebody, Ian, right? If you're training somebody, when I go with Haroon, I let him shoot because I know he's more precise shooter than me. And when I see him shooting, I learn, right? So for example, if I'm hunting with you, I'd rather let you shoot and not have the meat, because for me, learning how to hunt will be more important than having a share in the spoils.
Fair enough. Yeah. I have another question. One of the conversations that I had was around hunting for trophies. Right. So all of the conversation that you've had is so far around hunting for meat and consumption. I understand that hunting for trophy value is not something that you do.
Yeah, look, if you're just hunting for a trophy and you're just taking the head with the antlers and you're letting the body waste, that's definitely not allowed, because you're wasting the animal. Again, it comes under target practice of that nature. Unless you mix the trophy with the meat, you harvest the meat and you have intention to harvest it, then it's you're allowed. Or there could be a remote area where you can't harvest the whole animal, and you know that and you know that animal in that remote area is detrimental to the environments and landscape, and a verdict has been given by experts, then that comes under culling, right? Which is again allowed. So in general, no, trophy hunting may come under the category of recreation hunting, and just you're not using the animal unless it's for culling or. Yeah, I hope
it's an interesting.
That's clear. I know there's a lot of exceptions.
No, it's very clear. Very clear.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and I would just
you go and talk to any expert.
Sorry, and I would just like to add one thing. There's culling, and there's culling is shooting in mass, right? And so there's also when Ali was saying that we are shooting something in a remote area, and it's been classified as feral by the government. If the ruling government classifies it as feral, and you are supposed to be shooting it, then yes, you're allowed to shoot it. but culling is seen more as a shooting in mass. That's why I just wanted
Yeah,
to
look,
make that
I think
distinction.
I need to qualify that term culling, because when I say culling, I mean government has said that's a feral and it's been detrimental. So go, and that's why I gave that evidence that Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself allowed to kill the stray dogs because they were biting the inhabitants of the area. So it's not that I classify myself a certain animal is even on my private property, right? Uh, so I mean to say culling in that context, unless it's been if you're hunting an animal on a public land, and the government should tell, okay, you're allowed to take that animal. For example, foxes, you can shoot a fox, right? Because that's feral and it's been detrimental to the environment. Or even in your farm, there's some animals coming and destroying your crops or anything like that. Then you're allowed to take, unless the government. Again, you have to be compliant with authorities you're living in as well.
Yeah.
Which is render unto, I think is render unto Caesar, isn't it? That's the term we're talking about here. We're talking about the laws of the land are the laws of the land,
Yeah.
and we're required to comply with those laws of land. As you know, and the quote is render unto Caesar. Caesar's laws are Caesar's laws.
Yep.
The laws of the land around here are that deer are feral. Even though they're beautiful to eat, they're still a feral, and in most cases you are pest mitigating. It's the way public land was set up, whether that's its current motive or not. That was the idea. Hunters would go into this land to help control the numbers of ferals on the public land, and yes, we got to take advantage of it. I guess my question was more around your thoughts on trophy hunting in general as the purpose that you were going hunting, and if that's a feral animal, and you're saying that that's okay. I was under the assumption that shooting an animal to put its head on the wall, like behind Mark, is not necessarily something that's part of your hunting.
Is it okay?
Sorry, you're breaking a lot, Haroon.
Is it okay if I answer that question?
Yeah, sure. Go.
Yeah. So, look, trophy hunting, in my opinion, and Ali, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not wrong unless you're putting the meat to some use. Say, for example, if I'm going, say, for example, I'm going hunting internationally, right, to Africa or to America or New Zealand or wherever it is, for a few days, 2-3 days or whatever. So obviously, I will not be able to harvest the full animal and get it back to my home, right? The way I would do it in my own country, which is Australia. So I would at least try to consume whatever I can, like in the camp or whatever, and then the rest I can just give it to, say, whoever's with the outfitter or the locals over there. I can always. But the point is, making use of that meat is important, rather than just taking away the head and walking away with it.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think that's what I mean to say, that you have two intentions, right? If I'm going for a hunt, I love red deer. I like to have a big antler deer, right? But I'm not just hunting for those antlers. I'll be consuming the meat. But if I travel, for example, a 12-pointer in Brisbane, that's not my hometown, right? I'll distribute the meat with the locals, so somebody's consuming. It's not going to waste, right? So, but I've got two intentions. One is for a trophy and also a meat. But a third scenario could be, I'm just, for example, there could be an animal, for example, elephant, right? I just want to hunt an animal and get it tusked and hanging on the wall. That's not allowed, regardless of where I'm traveling, right? Because that's purely recreational, and you're not using it unless you're, there's some benefit. You're extracting some medicines out of it. There need to be some justification. You can't just go and shoot an animal. That's clearly not allowed. I think majority of scholars will say that, because it falls under not shooting an animal just for target practicing. While target practicing is highly encouraged in Islam, target practicing, swimming in general, maintaining the fitness, and hunting was highly practiced game as well. But it's purely for consumption, survival, not just for a trophy, unless it's a kind of like pest management.
But I mean, your example of an elephant in Africa, that meat gets distributed to the local community. So that would be allowed. You would be allowed to shoot an elephant because that meat's being utilized by the community.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah. So it's basically what we're saying is in the most negative interpretation of trophy hunting, i.e., there's a red stag, bang, shoot it, cut its head off, leave it in the paddock. No,
exactly.
No.
But if you go on a paid hunt and you see the red stag that you've always wanted for the wall, and you take it and you take the antlers and you somehow utilize that animal as best you can in that circumstance. The intent is utilization, not just purely trophy.
What about poaching? If you were poaching a deer for the intent of eating it, no? Oh, yeah. It's a valid question.
Finally, you asked this question.
No, we spoke a lot about even in the Muslim hunter camp, right? People overseas, hunting for them is night hunting, right?
Yeah.
So I might have a permission in a state forest, but I'm hunting at night. You're not allowed to hunt that because you're coming in a contract. You're signing a contract, and a Muslim does not betray or break his contract. So it's like stealing. Poaching is stealing, right? So of course, we were in the start of the discussion. A real practitioner, Islamic practitioner, will make sure that he's punctual at his job, upholding, being trustworthy, not betraying it, so that the money is acquiring to get the sustenance to make it perfect halal, right? So that's a mindset of a Muslim. But if somebody's going just shooting an animal randomly, that comes under stealing, because you don't own the land owned by the state. Yeah, I met some weird concept. Oh, it belongs to God. No, God has sent people to govern the land, and you have to obey the authority. If you have a problem with that, maybe go somewhere else or do it on your own private property. So that's definitely not allowed or halal. Even you might have in a state forest, you might shot an animal 9 p.m. or somebody might. It's not halal. It comes under stealing.
That goes back to the original point, isn't it? That the original point that halal is not simply a processing. It's a I don't know. It's a belief system in the manner in which you're acting.
It's a way of life. It's not just the final act. It's also the other act which is leading to the final act.
So as you were saying that. If you the way the world works, you earn money, you buy meat from the supermarket. There could be a question of its pure intention there, and whereas you're saying with hunting, it's actually seen as a very, very pure intention because there's no other mitigating factors other than you and the animal. So it's up to you now to uphold that. Perfect. So things then, so those things come into play again, which is the more, I suppose, the morality of it. If it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what you say, if that deer is a deer that you shouldn't be shooting for a reason, it's someone else's property, you're not supposed to be there, you can't claim that that's a halal activity because you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Even on the public property, you might have a permission, but you shot maybe 9 p.m. after half an hour past the sunset. That's not allowed. That's definitely haram because that's not on your contract or permit.
It's a really look. I don't know how many people are going to get that, but that's a really interesting takeaway from it because the conversation has, and even for us, has been dominated by the processing of meat within a certain approach known as halal. But what you're saying, no, it's more about your intention. There's a lot more in it than just,
just
the processing of meat.
Yeah. And it's,
so sorry, carry on.
So I could see $100, go buy a sheep, right? And I process with the halal better. Of course, that animal is not halal for me because the money I acquired was stealing. So there's a concept called taqwa. Taqwa means you are God conscious and you're conscious about the rules to govern and lead your life. And if you deviate from that's not halal. And once you deviate from anything which comes from the diversion, it's also not halal.
That is really interesting.
So, just to change the questioning a little bit, my line of questions is all about how we can include and help as many people as possible. And Haroon's come on the journey. He's listened to the podcast. He's gathered some ideas and some skills along the way, and he's become a very successful hunter. And it's been fantastic to watch. And we run these camps, right? A couple of times a year where people come and participate in the camps, and we help them get into public land and we help them go hunting. And a lot of the time they'll go hunting by themselves, but we'll facilitate a place that people can come and enjoy the experience together. So I was asking about trophy hunting, and I was asking about whether I could, shoot an animal and whether they could take the meat if there was a process that, we would be able to do that. And I ask that because people come to the camp and I've noticed in the past, we're all sitting around having a good time, and we've had a conversation about the day's hunt and whatnot, and then it's dinner time, and one or two people hop up and they disappear, and they don't participate in the meal because they're nice, they're polite enough just to go and do their thing and not make a fuss about it. But a couple of fellas disappear off to their tent and have a backcountry meal while we're chowing down on some nice back steaks that weren't halal. So, and it's a real shame to not consider people in your camp, and not even on purpose. Like, it's just an accident. So understanding the food prep side of that, because we've spoken about halal quite a bit, what other considerations are there for people that are coming to a communal camp that we might think about that aren't necessarily food related, but are there places you go or ways you set up or other things that you should include or think about to involve Islamic people?
Yeah, the other aspect could be alcohol is not allowed, halal. So, and it depends if the person is practicing or not as well. But generally, if the individual is a practicing Muslim, then don't offer him alcohol. There are rulings if the alcohol is mixed with the food. The right opinion is if the alcohol is processed and it's not, the output of that process is not intoxicant, then it's allowed. But majority of the people, that's what the the problem with alcohol, anything which is intoxicant is not halal, right? But if you use alcohol in medicine and it's been, or food and it's been transformed and it's not intoxicant, but it's a very controversial and sensitive topic among the Muslim majority of the people. They just want to stay away from alcohol altogether. So that's something sensitive. Be mindful about the alcohol. Dogs should be fine. Generally, dogs, you're not in Islamic law, you're not allowed to have a dog unless it's for hunting or for guarding the cattle. So I can't just have a dog as a pet unless it's for hunting or guarding the cattle. I know it's kind of like, sometimes I feel awkward, but I got over it because it's not, I didn't create a law because I believe that it's coming from God, right? And it's God who created a law. So I'm just conveying what it is. But there is a bit of drift, like, gambling is not allowed, liquor is not allowed, interest is not allowed. Yeah. So all that things which are very common in West are not allowed. And it troubled me when I came to Australia initially. But later on, I was like, the two things, like, and it might sound very complicated, right? But the basic principle is, do you really believe that God is true, or Allah is the real God? And do you really believe, based on your research, if Islam is the religion sent by the real God or Allah? Then if these two things are clarified, the remaining becomes easy. And the last point is, I'm talking about Muslim mindset in general, right? Is the God real? Is the religion really from the God? And what is the purpose of the life? What we believe the purpose of the life is a test. The human beings came from heaven. We are going through a test, and we need to follow this law. There are a lot of things which are attractive, which could be beneficial, but are made impermissible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself said in Quran, there may be some benefits in alcohol and gambling, but it's not allowed, right? So it's going through a test, and we go after that, there's another life. So if that's the mindset of a Muslim, so when a non-Muslim might say, that doesn't make sense, but remember, it's a test for a Muslim. He's trying to secure a wealth in life hereafter by following this law, because he'll get rewarded for it. And he believes if he doesn't follow this law, then he'll get punished for it in an eternal life after that.
So thank you. That's a really
sorry. Yeah, I was going to say
we're all going.
Yeah, I suppose the clarification is obviously not offering or accepting alcohol, but what about being around alcohol?
You'll see the consumption of alcohol is not allowed.
So being around people consuming alcohol, okay, sure.
Even and again, this is very sensitive. But if you go back to the academics,
so in simple terms, you're always the designated driver.
Yeah. So it's always good to have a Muslim in a camp.
Yeah, we got that problem solved, haven't we?
Yeah, fairly safe around.
Problem solved. That's right. I've always got a designated driver. There we go.
I would just like to add a couple of things.
So
in general terms, Ian, and in respecting everything that Ali just mentioned about what we are not allowed to do, and these are some things that and I've been to a few camps where I have camped with non-Muslims, and I shouldn't, my belief shouldn't really be, imposed on someone else. That is our belief, that it's not supposed to be imposed on someone else. So if you want to drink, go for it. If you want to gamble, go for it. If you want to do whatever you want, go for it. It shouldn't really affect us in any ways, or it shouldn't stop you from doing that. Look, at the end of the day, like as Ali said, it is our belief system that we should be away from these things, because there's a life after that, and we are accountable of our actions. What happens to us in the future. So that is our belief. So feel free to do whatever you want to do in the camp. Like for example, keeping in mind certain things, like if a person is Muslim, then if he drinks, and there are a lot of Muslims that I know who drink. If he drinks, he won't really wait for you to ask him to drink. Ask you to can I have a beer or something. He will come and grab a beer. He'll grab a beer for himself. But it wouldn't be right to offer him a beer or an alcoholic or intoxicant, whatever you say. If you know that he's a Muslim. So there's these are just the minor. Yeah,
or it might be. It might be not to not get offended if it's refused.
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably because you might, we don't get around with T-shirts to saying, these are things I can and can't do. So if you meet someone in camp and you offer them and they say no, sorry, you go, okay, cool, no problem.
Simple, as simple as that.
There is some sensitive aspect around it. I'm talking about the pure academics behind it, right? The alcohol is not, it's the intoxicant essence of it, it's haram, not allowed. The pork, for example, we consider it as something impure. but alcohol is not considered as impure. So, but there is the people kind of like mix between them, between this the understanding the concept, right? If alcohol drops on some Muslim, they think it's impure, and it's kind of like offensive. But the reality is, alcohol is not impure. The essence, the intoxicant. Because I do wear perfumes which has alcohol. You're allowed to wear it because I'm not consuming it. I'm getting intoxicated. But in cases like pork, for example, the meat itself, it's considered impure for consumption. So a Muslim will try to avoid touching the pork, for example, right? But he can touch alcohol. But generally, people don't know that, or the general masses of Muslims. So it's better, maybe we can ask them, right? Or before serving, if there's any alcohol mixed in the food, just let them know. It's up to their personal preferences. It may not be religious. I had friends back in my country who were non-Muslims but avoid alcohol because they believe consumption of alcohol would delay the recovery after a long soccer or a football match. So it's kind of like personal preference. Better ask them, always. And yeah.
Can I touch then on? And I think what I've heard is we've got the sober driver, and you guys can bring the meat, and we're all good. But beyond that, you talked about a couple other things. It's sounding pretty good. I want to
drink a beer while you get.
Sounding pretty good. A couple other things. You talked about interest. Now, I want to talk about it in a minute, but before that, because that's fascinating to me, that one. It's got nothing to do with hunting, but I want to understand that a bit more. The other one was gambling. Now, this might sound trivial, and it's all coming back to hunt camp, right? And how to prepare for everybody. We run raffles. Right, you put your $5 in for the chance to win the binoculars. Now that can be seen as gambling. Maybe
it is gambling.
It is gambling, right? So if I said,
when I say it is gambling, sorry, continue.
If I restructured that in a way that said that, no. So if I created a raffle where you gave $10 to join and you might win the binoculars. That's gambling in that sense. But if I asked you to donate $10 to a charity and everyone goes into the draw to win the binoculars, does that include you in the process? These are the little subtleties that try and help us understand how to be.
That is a good question. That is such a good question.
Very good question. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I've been thinking about this for weeks.
When I say Quran,
that's a really good question.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has specifically spoke about compare charity with interest, for example, right? So charity is allowed. As a matter of fact, charity is encouraged. As a matter of fact, if you want to prove yourself as a Muslim, one of the fundamental principle of practicing Muslim that he needs to give 2.5% of his wealth in charity, mandatory, right? And more charity is encouraged. So charity is allowed, but you can donate. So donation comes under charity, but a lottery system or putting your money with the intention of an uncertain outcome, that's not allowed.
Okay.
You can still give the donation, but not accept the price, I guess.
So, okay, here's the thing, because we wouldn't want to inadvertently not allow some. So if I sold you a paper ticket for $10 and you bought this paper ticket for $10, and then later on we decided that for whatever reason we made a decision and that you should get a set of binoculars, or you might not, but depending on the decision we made at the time, is that still gambling?
So you bought a ticket.
I sold you a paper ticket for $10.
Let's make it easy. It costs you $10 to come to camp. You have to pay $10 if you want to participate. The fact that we then issue a lucky door prize to somebody partway through.
Here's a ticket to say you pay for it.
An uncertain outcome, though.
Yeah. Look, the first hadith in one of the books of jurisprudence, like I said, every action is based on your intention. Right? My intention is coming to the camp, not to gamble, right? But if I win a prize, so for example, I went to Haroon's Muslim Hunter scam twice. I got a gift both the time. I was lucky enough. I got.
What did you get?
I got 2,000 rounds of tutu, right? But my intention was not to get that. It just happened to be I got the prize. But
all right, you've answered my question. It's just it's important in the way that you structure some of these things. Not trying to mislead anyone into doing the wrong thing, but
exactly. It all depends.
The subtleties are important.
As Adi mentioned, it all depends on the intention. Coming to a camp and to pay, it's a valid reason to come to a camp. Sometimes you have to, everyone has to pitch in, when they come in, and there are giveaways for that. It's with the intention that you put in. So now there are many things that we do, like we come across these in many of these Facebook things that you put in, $10 and you can win a brand new 79 series with all the bells and whistles and whatnot. That is gambling. So it all begins with the intention and what's the purpose behind it, what's the context behind it, just to keep it simple.
Yeah
Thank you, that's good.
I've got a question.
I asked my other question.
So
here you go.
Okay, go ahead for it. So go.
Oh, the last one was, talk to me about interest, because we all live in a world of borrowing and lending and all of those sorts of things. How does that work?
See, in general, not general, I mean, clear-cut interest is not allowed. You're not allowed to, take interest, and you're also not allowed to give interest. So you'll see a lot of Muslim community, by the way, they are renters, right? And they keep the property market balanced because we rent a lot. Interest is not allowed, straight up. It's one of the major offense under, and there's a major consequences in next life, the life after death. So it is like waging a war against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. There are a lot of justifications. I mean, it's enough to be constituted in Islam that it's not allowed and people just not practicing it. I'm not taking it. Sorry, I forgot what I was saying. But there also are the scholars have came up with a lot of other reasonings why the damaging impacts of interest to the society in general, and the monetary system in general, and how rich becomes richer, poor becomes poorer, and etc., 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 and how the money can lose its value. And it's a big financial topic, but the root cause is like it's even more worse than having alcohol, if I have to put it from it. I can't remember the actual technical term from the offense, but it's more of an offense to deal with interest than consuming alcohol, for example.
Wow.
I think what Ian was trying to ask Ali was also, how does it work in today's, especially in the Western world that we are living? Everything around here, revolves around interest, right? Like, you want to buy a house, you get a loan, you're paying interest. You want to buy a car, you get a loan, you pay interest. There's no such thing as interest-free loan.
That's right. You get paid interest. Yeah.
Look, and there is a narration, a prophecy by a prophet. There will be a time the interest will be so widespread, and he gave an example of an analogy of a man who's living in desert. Remember, it's very dusty area, right? So somebody who's wearing a white garment, and you will see the traces of dust. So even though a man might try to abstain from interest, but you'll still see the strains of interest, because he's trying to keep himself clean, but there's still stains of dust. So it was projected, right? And it's very widespread. I normally don't deal with interest. I called my bank accounts. I told them not to give me interest. And also, I try to, take hand loans and put in my offset account to work around that interest. It's manageable. I mean, I live in Sydney. I own a house. And I believe that I had that mindset of, regardless, I'll stay without a house. I don't care. Because how many years I'm going to live in this world? 60, 100 years? I'm going to spend more time under the ground in my grave than the time above the ground. So I'd rather sacrifice the life above the ground so that I have comfort under the ground or in the next world. But in saying that, look, I had that intention, I worked hard, and I don't pay interest because I've got money sitting in my offset account. And yes, it might appear that I'm losing, but I don't see I'm losing my lifestyle. You know, I've got a 4-wheel drive, my wife doesn't work, she got a car. But the thing is, I had that intent, I had trust in God, and I worked hard, and I still have a lifestyle without, involving in any loans or anything like that. And I can sleep a peaceful night. I'm not stressed. But again, look, it's a big topic. In not saying that there are a lot of Muslims who takes interest for the first homes and stuff. It's a personal preferences and how much you want to excel. It's like you're saving to build something, right? You save to build something, or you sacrifice. So if the mindset is you sacrifice the luxuries of this world so that you can build another world which comes after death, then things starts becoming easier. So in general, yes, usually it's one of the major offenses in Islamic law, more than alcohol. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, there's a whole big side conversation to that, but we won't dive into that now. I just think I've never heard that before until recently, and I think we spoke around a campfire for quite some time about the subject. It was interesting. Mark, you had a question?
Yeah, so it's a hypothetical. So say there is a guy by the name of, let's say Haroon, okay? And this guy Haroon is hunting in a forest with other hunters. And on the first day, one of these other hunters spots a pig. And just as he's about to shoot that pig, this other hypothetical hunter called Haroon drives up in his car and scares away the pigs. Okay? Now hypothetically scares away the pigs. Okay? And so it's seen as, well, maybe, that's just coincidence or anything like that. So the very next day, other hunters in the same group, but other hunters come over the hill and see the pigs in the same position. And they get out to shoot the pigs. And just as they get out to shoot the pigs, this hunter again, let's call him Haroon, turns up again and scares off the pigs. Now, I want to know is this hunter by the name Haroon for some reason protecting those pigs? Is there a reason why he's protecting those pigs from the other hunters? Because he seems to appear whenever they want to shoot those pigs, he seems to be there to scare them off. So I don't know. What do you think? What's your thought about that, guy?
Is it a question to me or Haroon?
No. Just this guy called. We're just using the name Haroon.
I don't know. Haroon must be annoying others. If that's his intention, I mean, I can give you the answer from an Islamic perspective. Like, even though you're not allowed to consume a pig, but pig is allowed for other communities. So in general, I mean, as a Muslim, we've been told to be uphold or have a higher ground and show the best characters and moral, and not to be a nuisance to your neighbors or anyone in general. Right? So,
he's throwing you under the bus here,
Haroon, mate, look. He's the man that knows. He's telling you, stop scaring pigs, okay? Whatever you do, stop scaring pigs.
That's right.
It was incredibly. It was. I wish we had like a video camera. It was amazing. Right? They're the pigs. There's Haroon.
Same place, same time.
Next day, there's a pig.
That's a real incident, is it?
It really happened.
Real,
2 days in a row. 2 days in a row. Same thing at same location. It was like the pigs were waiting for us to turn up, and then just the room would turn up. Just amazing. Just outside of have you hunted Nundle, Ali?
Yeah, not in Nundle. Yes, no, I did hunt it in Nundle. Not hunting.
This is literally just past Ponderosa.
Oh, okay.
2 days in a row. Just you come over the gully and There's a blackberry bush and the pigs are in front of the blackberry bush. And
I think I know that area. I scouted that area.
Yeah. It's amazing. So,
yeah.
Even at the time when I came to the camp with the food, I told the guys that there's someone while I was coming to the camp, there's someone I saw literally like a minute ago,
that's right.
ran over a pig, a big one. And I came and Mark said, "How far is it?" I said, "It's just about 200, 250 meters from here."
It's 2 kilometers away.
And when I was trying to drive back, and I was thinking, "Oh shit, I might have made a mistake here. I think it's more than 200 meters. Definitely, it was about 2 kilometers."
That's right. That was the learning from that particular camp was if Haroon ever says take a 300-meter shot, decline it because it's about 3 kilometers. It's a 2-kilometer shot. That's right. So yes, it was a great camp, that one. So that was it. That was only that. So there you go. Stop bothering the pigs.
Haroon,
how we going, guys? Oops.
Man, things are going haywire on this.
We're having a go from Haroon.
Tell us about your growing YouTube channel now, and what your plans are for the future. What's the target species for you now?
In terms of the YouTube channel, I think we've had this conversation earlier. Like, I never started this channel with with the intention of actually gaining any attention or anything. It was just so that I have family spread across the world, and I want and like I said, I grew up hunting with my dad back in the country back in the days, and my dad used to record his hunts in those olden VHS tapes. Remember those days? What happened was sadly due to some incident, all those recordings and everything were lost. So I wanted to somehow, save my hunts, not on, not on physical copies, but at least, something on, on the platform, so that in the future, if my daughters or if my relatives, anyone across the world want to watch it, they can watch it. But eventually, somehow, it just turned into this, I wouldn't call it obsession, but just getting myself out there and representing my values of hunting from what with this, especially this topic from Islamic point of view. I try to showcase that through my videos, and it's been going good. Not just from an Islamic tradition, but also from a hunting point of view, and then especially thanks to you guys. Most of the things that I talk over there, probably I would have had that conversation with either Ian or Mark previous day, and I just talk the same thing the very next day on the videos. So, and they work. And then what I've learned through a limited experience that I have is just keeping it simple and basic. Keeping your hunting simple and basic as much as you can is the best way forward. There are some basic things that you need to do, and then you can still hunt. So in terms of that, I started out hunting in Severn, and then moved on to with as I got more and more comfortable with hunting getting onto deer in Nundle. And then I started now pushing the boundaries, and I thought, since we don't have many options around Brisbane, so I have a mate that lives in Canberra, and what I do is I usually because and I think Mark, you said the same thing as well in one of our conversations. The more south you go towards Victoria, the more variety that you get over there. So I was thinking, in terms of monetary value, I'm spending about $500 a trip to Nundle, in diesel and in food and stuff, basic trip. And I'm spending half of the money if I'm going to say flying down to Canberra and just driving down a forest which is about 2 hours from there. So and I'm getting more variety there. So why not just target, sambar? You get red deer, fallow. You have much more variety the more south you go. So that's where I'm going to be focusing more of my hunts in the future. Yes, Hanging Rocks does hold a very special place, and I am going there in a couple of weeks, as a matter of fact. But I'll be focusing more of my hunts towards the south now, and chasing sambar, definitely.
Fantastic. And you went, was it Bondi you went to?
Yeah, I did. I actually go to. I actually go to 2 forests over there, and it's a very big system there. In that forest, it's similar to how Nundle is. So you have Nundle, Tugalo, Hanging Rocks, Terrible Billy, all these different forests coming. So you have Bondi over there, Kulan Kubra, then you have Nalbog, Bombala, all these forests coming in together. So, and all of these forests are very productive. It's just you need to know where to look for them, and it's amazing that when you think of Samba, you think of high country, Victoria high country, right? So, and that's not the case. In those forests, they live in the most simple of the areas that you can think of. In one of those, you walk around those creeks and they're there. It means you don't have to, go into the deep gully systems to find them. So, yeah, those are very big forests. If you get the basics right, and know where you. And I think, Mark, you and I did a bit of scouting of Bondi State Forest as well, and it turns out we were not far away from what we had actually looked on the map, Google Earth.
Oh, really? Some of those points. There we go. Because I did notice when I watched the video where it looked like you took that deer, I thought, yeah, that's kind of the country we're talking about.
One of the things that I've learned, and these are the things that I always used to go away from, like, for example, those fresh logged areas, those are the areas that I never looked at in the past. Like, I always used to think, why would the deer come there? What's there for them over there? And,
fresh green shoot.
It's now my mind.
Regrowth.
Exactly. And my view, since I've started hunting Bondi, it's completely reversed. Like, I'm now focusing more on those open countries than I ever did before. So yeah, it's been going good. I have plans to grow it more, and more trips coming together. Not much in the summer, is I don't really function well in heat. But having said that, I'm going to Sydney tomorrow to go on a hunt with Ali to Pennsylvania State Forest.
There we go.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to seeing that on YouTube sometime in the short term.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I shot a fellow out at Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it is a good forest. It is.
It is. It's a working, most definitely a working forest. It's really a working forest. Heavy machinery going all the time, things like that. But certainly productive, and carries a lot of deer in the right places. I mean, there's a lot of human activity there, so you need to be aware of that. I think that kind of throws a lot of people off, but the deer is still there. They just they're just aware of that, a lot of that human activity. No, but I took a little fellow there. Yeah, in fact, I drove from Pennsylvania to Brisbane in one day.
And then did a podcast.
And then did a podcast and basically fell asleep.
On the podcast.
Oh,
that's right.
Go back and look at episode whatever it was, 7.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah.
That's good.
Drove back one day. So,
Just before we wrap up, is there anything else that we may not have covered or asked that you think's worth raising, or do you think we've had a good stab at of the subject. I think it's been a really great conversation.
Very eye-opening.
No,
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So enjoy hunting and encourage as much as possible, and just chill. And if somebody doesn't like anything, they'll let you know. But it was good to share this knowledge, and the questions were really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I
think in a
appreciate
nutshell,
both of you coming on and having a conversation.
I said in
Yeah,
the
definitely,
earlier,
Luca.
like I said earlier, in a nutshell, halal is, I think, Mark, you summed it up really well. It's not the actual processing of the meat. It's the thought or intentions that go behind it as well. And it all lines up with, the basic ethics that a hunter, follows or, swears by. So there's nothing different there. It's just we give it a term halal because it just literally means permissible, and it's just a word that kind of misleads people. So yeah, you have to. It's basically you have to do the right thing in simple terms, and you don't have to be religious to know that what's differentiate between what's right and what's wrong. It's just basic common sense. So other than that, yes, there are certain technicalities, which Ali, really explained them really well. But if you step away from the technicalities, think about it logically, it just everything just makes sense, and we do it, knowing or unknowingly, we all do it, whether we are Muslims or non-Muslims or whatever, we all do it. It's just by just giving that name halal, it just makes it different, which what we are trying to convey the message is not different, it's just the way of life that we follow.
Yeah, I think that was really a big learning, for me, was that the fact that it's not the process is obviously really important, but the reasoning behind the process is what we're talking about here. We're talking about a philosophical view of the world that's expressed as a process, but the process itself is just the end, what you see. It's not the thoughts and the logic and a lot of it sounds very logical and reasoning, and also I suppose the morality behind it as well, and I think that really came home about like if you do something illegal and then slaughter the animal in the tradition of halal, that does make it halal. You don't kind of wipe that away.
Yeah,
I think that was really quite interesting. That, yeah,
right.
Okay,
awesome. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, guys, thank you very much for your time, and Ali, especially for your knowledge. It's been really insightful, and I'm hoping a lot of people hear this one and get something from it. So again, thank you for making the time. I know you guys are running at just over 11 o'clock now down there in Sydney. That's a penalty for you living in Sydney, but we can't help that.
It's all good. I learned a lot from you and from your student Haroon, so it's all good.
Okay, guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, here. Nice video.
Thank you, guys.
Mark.
See you again.